Se por um lado, daqui a pouco a gente vai estar viajando para Marte, explorando Marte, o nosso próximo palestrante tem uma frase muito bacana que fala assim, olha, a arte nos faz revisar determinados paradigmas, como a ideia de fronteira e algumas divisões estabelecidas no nosso próprio planeta. Para trazer essa reflexão para a gente sobre o nosso papel no universo e no futuro da humanidade, quero chamar o nosso próximo palestrante, é o artista multidisciplinar, fundador da KOSMICA, que é um instituto global com a missão de estabelecer uma plataforma para discursos críticos, culturais e políticos sobre o impacto das missões espaciais. Ele que combina tecnologias espaciais, ilusionismo e hipnose para estimular as fronteiras do pensamento. Vamos chamar agora o artista mexicano, primeiro com o trabalho artístico exposto no espaço, Nahum Mantra. You're welcome.
In 1774, there was a German physicist that he thought that he had invented something, that he had found something new. He realized in his mind that we all have an energy that flows in our bodies, and that every time that we have a problem in our bodies, it's because this energy is not circulating. He found also a way to control this magnetic fluid, as he called it. The procedure was quite simple. You put both hands in this position in front of the subject and move your hands. And in that way, the energy will be able to flow again in the subject's body. Countless of books were written about the properties of animal magnetism. Stories were written about people recovering health and even people recovering sight. And this man, Franz Anton Mesmer, he also laid the foundations of what we know today as hypnosis. But going 140 years later into the future, somewhere in Russia, there was a scientist, Lev Theremin. Theremin was playing with invisible. He wanted to control these forces that we cannot see. He was designing antennas for espionage, but also he was a musician. He played the cello, and he was playing with this instrument that works also with the invisible. He realized that we all have an electromagnetic field, and using the principle of capacitance of a circuit, like my body, and another circuit, like this instrument, they play with these invisible forces, and you can play sound. So the way it works is you have here the volume, and here you have the pitch. Both Franz Anton Mesmer and Thurmin wanted to play with invisible. By the way, Thurmin, he discovered a couple of stars. But today, we remember Mesmer as a mad person, but his poetics were right, and science made these poetics possible. And this reads like this. February 26, 1962. Dear Miss Kelly, this is in response to your letter February 20th, 1962. Your offer to go on a space mission is commendable, and we are very grateful. This is to advise that we have no existing program concerning women astronauts, nor do we contemplate any such plan. We appreciate your interest and support of the nation's space program. Sincerely, O.B. Lloyd Jr., the Director of Public Information at NASA. Okay, we need to check the audio here. But in this video, as you all know it, we hear the words, "That's a small step for man, that's a giant leap for mankind." These words are the words by Neil Armstrong, and indeed, he was talking about the moon landing. And yes, it was a big feat for men, but sadly, not for women. Can we have someone check the audio, please?
Yeah. Various paces that a person can traveling on the
Great.
surface. You do have to be. All right. You do have to be.
Okay. So let's remember that the history of space exploration is often tied to industrialized and powerful countries, in many occasions following the logic of economic and capitalism and imperialism. In turn, space activities have reinforced the colonial, racial, and gender orders, leaving very little room for having a true cultural diversity in space. In the 70s, space exploration looked like this. And you can see one thing in common, right? But close your eyes. As you listen to the sound of my voice, and you're breathing in and out as deep as you can, Soon you will travel to a place far away from here. Okay, open your eyes. The cell phone is waking us up. But these words are the words of a trip that has no restrictions, a trip that is open to everyone. A few years ago, I started to hypnotize people in theaters all around the world with the idea of opening up this experience, what it would be like to be on the moon. At the end of the day, all the memories that you have are not accurate descriptions of the objective world, but they are more constructions of your emotions and your cultural filters. So if it happened in your mind and in your experience, then it's somehow real. So after injecting or uploading memories to the moon in people's minds, sometimes they open their eyes and they remember something quite extraordinary.
I got onto the moon. I started to drift off, and the boundaries between dream and memory are very fuzzy for me.
Yeah, I was alone, but the strange part is I felt like the moon was really small. Like I didn't feel like the way you would on Earth, like the way things are just flat. Like when I was sitting there, I felt like I was on a round little ball.
So I was looking at the ground and I could see this grayish white, rocky surface.
I was floating on a little mini tin submarine, it would have been like a submarine sort of floating out in outer space, and there was no sound, and any kind of sound was just swallowed by a vacuum.
And the gravity you would feel pulling you back down to Earth, that rapid acceleration up into the stratosphere.
It was strange, I felt very light, my physical body actually felt light.
Mais j'avais pas la sensation de marcher, juste de flotter, plutôt de nager dans une matière.
I remember my body felt like it was floating, like it was all the way, it was flying off instantly.
Istniałam tam jako duch i latałam wokół i zwiedzałam kosmos.
So those are some of the stories that people remember. But another way of discussing these challenges, such as diversity, apart from hypnotizing people in theaters, is by something that I called cultural space policy. In 2008, I was invited by Frank Malina, actually the son of the founder of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Frank Malina, to set up the first cultural and artistic department within the International Astronautical Federation. This is, imagine the federation of all space agencies and space industry. And we wanted to create this space for bringing in artists in direct dialogue with the people that make space activities possible. So, as you can see, things are changing today. We're a little bit more diverse. And also, after 12 years of me working in the space community, I've learned that often when we imagine our future in space, we carry or we keep certain logics of Western practices. For example, these quotes, they all talk about the future, but also they talk about something else, which is, what do you see in common? Yeah, exactly. They use the colonial model to picture our future beyond our planetary home. And this is where we have to think why we're using this framework to think about our future. Colonization, it's a very specific term. It's not a concept that it's open to exploration. We've done it in many parts of our world, and I come from a colonized country, Mexico, and we are still going to therapy after this. So So very often we have to think that space also can bring us opportunity to invent new alternatives to occupation, colonization, and exploitation, you know, in a society that is obsessed with exploiting resources here and there. And right now we talk about the Anthropocene, but maybe one day we will talk about the Anthropocosmos. So, a few years ago, in 2011, I founded an institute called KOSMICA. And KOSMICA, I'll tell you about it, it's here. In KOSMICA, we are interested in creating platforms for critical, cultural, and artistic discourses around our relationship with outer space, space activities, and how these activities have an impact on Earth. We've done sessions all around the world where we invite artists to come and share their views about space exploration.
To the longevity and health of humanity. To survive, think about it, to survive we became astronauts, star travelers, guided by the cosmos in search of greater resources.
So we go and we ask artists to tell us how they imagine humanity beyond Earth, and we are collecting all these responses, and then when we go to the astronautical congresses, we share these ideas in an attempt to democratize and bring other languages and other perspectives to space activities. But I also believe that space can help us to look through different eyes all the things that we're doing on Earth. For example, it's very common that when astronauts come back to Earth, they say things like this. For example, José Hernández, the Mexican-American astronaut, he says that, "I had to leave this world to come to the conclusion that borders are a human-made concept." So with KOSMICA, we started this series of projects to support those people that suffer from these man-made mental borders the most. So for the last also years, we've been doing projects in refugee shelters and immigration centers, both in Europe and in Mexico, where we come with a program where they have to devise space missions, speculative space missions. And I want to share something with you today. When we were in Tempelhof in Berlin, when the huge migration crisis happened, we went there and they were like designing their space missions and reframing their connection to Earth. And there was a story written by a Syrian girl that I would like to read to you now. I am the moon, and I have accompanied Earth during millions of years. I've seen it changing, continents moving, and asteroids crashing. Throughout time, I have seen some tiny beings move on it. Every night, they make the Earth blink in the dark. On one peaceful day, I watched a silver object dancing around me. It landed, and from its entrails, I saw two tiny beings walking out. They jumped around and raised the flag that made me tickle. After having some fun, they flew back home. Soon after, another group of creatures came to visit me. They walked around and collected stones and dust. After a few visits, I believed they knew everything about Earth's creatures. It was simple. They all looked the same and sounded the same. One day, things changed. A new group of tiny beings came to visit me, but now they looked different from each other and spoke in different melodies that I've never heard before. Carefully, they scratched me and planted a fragile, colorful thing. It was red and full of scent. The earthly creatures call it a rose, I call it a friend. Thank you. Thank you. And also, I, as an artist, 5 minutes, don't do this to me. Okay, I'm gonna run quickly. Last year, we did something important. I always, as an artist, I'm always thinking how space can help us to connect to each other, connect to all non-human forms, and connect us to the space we live in, the cosmos. So I collaborated with the European Space Agency, SpaceX, the International Space University, and this astronaut that you can see here, Alexander Gerst, to place the first interactive artwork in outer space inside the International Space Station. And that little box that he's installing inside has a light that activates when people touch a surface here on Earth, and it starts flashing like your heart, like your heartbeat. So right now it's orbiting somewhere, and whenever we have exhibitions, people can send their heartbeats, and there's this light somewhere in the universe that flashes like you. So also, just to finalize, around 5 years ago, I was in Star City in the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center, and I was doing my training. And I organized a zero-gravity flight on board a huge plane, the biggest one to do zero gravity. So the plane goes really high up, and then it drops. What happens inside is you start floating, you lose gravity. And the first time that I was there suspended in the middle of nothing, and I realized that every cell of my body had lost its weight. In that situation, me and nothingness, we were exactly the same thing. I couldn't feel myself. But as soon as I extended my arms and I reached out and embraced the other people that were on the plane floating, I realized that we can only exist if we're together. I was able to feel myself by feeling the other. So we made a video about this specific moment. So I would like to ask our friends up there to switch off the light. Gracias.